it's time for us to begin a serious discussion about the future of the synagogue. Since the pandemic erupted, I haven't raised the issue of money. I haven't spoken about fundraising even once. But now's the time. You will have or should soon receive a letter from me urging you to give generously to the synagogue. This is our springtime fundraising season. Normally we have a spring appeal. We were set to honor two amazing members of our congregation, Michael Patterson, the former president of our synagogue, and Robert Caro, one of the foremost historians of our times. We will still have a June 7th virtual fundraiser, spring appeal, and it'll be fun and exciting with all kinds of surprises. I urge you to mark that date. And as for the two honorees, we'll be able to honor them appropriately next year. But I haven't raised this issue of money with you, despite the fact that daily my email is inundated with urgent appeals from dozens of organizations, all worthy. But I haven't done that because it seemed to me that with respect to our congregants in our synagogue, the most urgent need was for us to attend to our wounded spirit. And therefore, I directed all of our staff, the clergy as well as the educators, to spend all of their time, every ounce of their strength on you, on our wounded spirit, because it seemed to me that the urgency of the time was for instilling strength and healing. And I reminded our very capable staff members that as difficult as these days are for us, and they are very difficult, we have a ferocious work ethic anyway, and now everything for us is taking twice the time for half the effect. A famous Israeli poet once said that it's like kissing your grandmother through a veil. It's something, but it's not the whole thing. And so I suggested to our amazing staff that as difficult as these days are for us, one day, I think, in particular those of my colleagues who have a much longer work horizon than I do, that I suggested to them that to look back on these days, never having felt quite so useful, so needed, so alive, so vital as when we were operating under these unusual conditions of the pandemic of the spring of 2020. I reminded our fantastic clergy that it is a unique privilege to be a rabbi, especially at this point in time, when so many people are in such need of healing and strength. I discussed with our cantor that it is a unique privilege now to be a cantor in the Jewish community when there are so few members of our community who can help people pry open the gates of heaven. And I stressed to our teachers of Torah that to teach Torah in any circumstance is a high honor, let alone now when so many people are so eager to discover basic Jewish values and how our values and our tradition can shed light on our current difficulties. And so we've spent all of our time and all of our energy on our congregants. But you need to know that the burden of sustaining our congregation is not simply a professional burden. In fact, the heaviest burden financially is on you. You're the ones who join. You're the ones who fund all of our operations. We have no other source of revenue but you. You are our resource for all of the funds that come into the synagogue. You're the ones that allow us to teach Torah to hundreds of school children and hundreds of adults. You're the ones who pay for our ability to give shelter to up to 10 homeless guests 4 or 5 days a week. You are the ones who allow us to feed approximately 150 people who are hungry. You're the ones who pay for our security. You're the ones who pay for the upkeep. It's always been that way from the beginning. There is a very famous Jewish teaching that goes back probably at least 1800 years that states, Ein kemach, ein Torah. If there is no bread, no money, there's no Torah. Someone needs to pay the Torah teachers, maintain and secure the premises, and keep the lights on. I realize that this is an especially heavy burden on you at this point in time. You have not been spared the rampaging economic devastation spreading across the country. But there is a concept in Judaism called Yesurei Ahava, the burdens of love. If we are not able together to sustain this financial burden of maintaining the synagogue, this congregation that we have loved so much and have worked so hard to raise from the depths to become one of the preeminent synagogues in all of American life, the future of this synagogue will not be sustainable. No one should risk their own financial well-being. We do not take oaths of poverty in Judaism. Still, I want to urge you to dig deep, be generous, give with a full heart. And those of you who are blessed with particularly abundant resources at this time, I ask you to dig deep and give more than perhaps you have given in the past. And I think that you too might look back upon these days and your heart will swell with pride and satisfaction that you came through precisely when the synagogue needed you most. I'm asking all of us to prioritize Stephen Wise. American Jewry is a marvel, it's a miracle. There are hundreds of Jewish organizations, all doing important work for the Jewish community. But I want you to remember that the heart of the Jewish community, the indispensable institution without which we cannot maintain American Jewish life, is the synagogue. This is the place where Jewish identity is forged and where Jewish identity is sustained from our earliest moments in life until our final breaths. And it's only after we, synagogues, do our jobs and instill the strongest possible Jewish identity in congregants who come to us, that Jewish identity can then be leveraged for all of the other important components of American Jewish life. It's only after we've instilled Jewish identity that Jewish identity can be invested in Jewish community centers, in Jewish defense organizations, in organizations that protect us from anti-Semitism, and all those organizations that work to enhance the relationship between American Jewry and world Jewry with Israel at its core. There's much thought today about what is an essential business. From the Jewish perspective, the most essential business of American Jewish life is the synagogue. You might have even caught this celebrity Seder over Passover. I watched it. It generated millions of views and millions of dollars. And I was thinking to myself, everything Jewish, even Jewish secularism, even Jewish atheism, emerges from the Jewish values so lovingly and relentlessly conveyed from antiquity until now by the teachers of Torah. Those who instilled the values of Judaism from antiquity until our very day. Many congregations will not survive this pandemic. We will see a rash of synagogue closings in the months and the years to come. Many other synagogues might hobble along, but they will never be able to recapture their former glory. I have confidence in you. I have confidence in us. We can do this. And our generation can then look back with enormous satisfaction that we did our job, that we handed over to the generation that will succeed us a good synagogue, a healthy synagogue, so that they can then continue the century-long tradition of the Stephen Wise Free Synagogue. I want to wish you and your families good health, many blessings, and much strength.